I do.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name's Jeff Hamilton. I'm assistant professor in the School of Ed, and I'm kind of the third string quarterback. Dr. Neal's the program coordinator. He had a death in the family. And Dr. Lamb certainly is a clinical specialist. So Dr. Bull has asked me to do this. I've worked in the middle since 2011. Former principal, assistant principal, teacher, assistant principal, and been involved with this a long time. But today is really to hear from you. This is so vital that we hear from the practitioners in the field. And so I'm going to give just a brief overview of the MELS program, sort of the conceptual framework for that. And then I wanted to share our courses and the outcomes that we list for each course. And then I want to hear from you looking through the lens of a practitioner. MELS is built to create practitioners, building level administrators. That's the lens. And so those of you that have been or are hiring building level, I really need you to look through that lens of what are the skill sets that you need day one for an administrator in your building. We're talking about hard skills and soft skills. And so that's the most important thing that will happen today is the feedback that you give us. So we're going to record that and really look and integrate that into what we're doing. So that's sort of our focus. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. Please ask any questions that you have. So I know this is hard to see because we were expecting to have a large screen and be able to project it.
I don't have the one.
But basically it focuses around the competencies. There are 21 identified competencies in North Carolina. And by the way, what I'm sharing with you now is not just Gardner-Webb. These are state requirements from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. So our program and any other program in North Carolina that offers executive leadership or principal preparation, the parts I'm sharing with you now are commonalities across that. So there's 21 identified competencies, and then the rest of the program components, things like collaboration, use of technology, reflection, faculty support, disposition, which are those values and beliefs that educators should have, the clinical experience, and the course content. So all of that is lined up. We try to make everything line up with developing those competencies. CAPE, which is our accreditor in Standard 2, is all about clinical preparation. And here, and I'm not going to read all that, but I want you to see what I've highlighted in yellow, which indirectly is why we're together today. CAPE requires us to partner with LEAs. Requires us to partner. And it has to do so in a way that you don't just support us, but we have to be supporting you as well. Therefore, it says we will have mutually beneficial arrangements, which can be technology-based for clinical prep, share responsibility, mutual agreeable expectations, share accountability. So we're partners in true sense between us as preparing educators and you as employing. So it has to be very much a complete partnership. So when it talks about mutually beneficial is one of the big parts, so that if our partnership only benefits us and doesn't benefit you as a local education agency, then that's no good. It has to be completely both ways. That's the whole concept between mutually beneficial. So here are some ways that we see now that we're mutually beneficial. We can provide high quality leaders in as little as 12 months through our add-on program. If they already have a master's degree, we have a 3-semester add-on program. We also offer all of our resources as a School of Ed to you as an LEA. I was in Burns High School yesterday, and one of the things, talking with the administrator, who we have an intern there, I say, you know, our partnership includes for you all the resources we have as a School of Education, should you need something for faculty training or something to help you in the building. That's part of the relationship that we have with all of our partnering schools that are working with our interns. We can share information, video recordings. All of our faculty has types of expertise that we go in and collaborate with schools. I do a lot of stuff with EVOS and value-added assessment, training teachers and principals on the use of EVOS. We have other things: leadership competencies, response to intervention, rigor and relevance framework. All of these things are resources the School of Ed has and offers to you because of our mutual beneficial relationship. We also have school administrators, district level executives, when we have our CILD conference every summer, which is open to the community. We invite obviously our students, but it's open to anyone in the community. So we have a leadership conference every summer as well. These are just some of the things, and we're looking for more. These are just some examples. CAPE Standard 2.2 says, in collaboration with partners, we use multiple indicators to establish, maintain, and refine criteria for selecting our candidates, professional development, performance evaluation, continuous improvement. So it's not just a service level relationship, but we're involved in selecting and building our curriculum, our clinical experiences, shared accountability, that we work together more than just on the surface. These are a few other things. We talk about professional development, performance evaluation. We do surveys. We will share that information from our candidates on our surveys. We have a program survey. We will share that information with you regularly. We'll have, as well as continuous improvement process. And we really focus on retention of our clinical educators in all of their settings. That's a big goal of ours. 2.3 talks about working with partners to design experiences. And notice the language here. Sufficient depth, breadth, diversity, coherence, and duration to ensure that candidates demonstrate effectiveness. Not in the standard I'm showing you today, but there is a place at the very beginning of CAPE when you start reading the overall information. One of the first things it says, which I think is so important, it says clinical experiences is the heart of educator preparation. Not attending class, clinical preparation. So it is vitally important to us, for our creditors, and also for us as well, that the heart of it is the clinical setting. And we teach it from a terms of, you get content knowledge in the classroom, but if we're not putting it into practice in the building, then we've missed our point. So we put a big focus. That's what Dr. Lamb's specialty is, working as a clinician, is really what we talk about, educator, clinician, which I enjoy doing because I have a particular interest and passion in school level leadership. And a lot of that was from some of my own experiences of being out and the challenges of being a building level leader. It's also about works with partners to design. So it's not enough for us to say, here are the experiences we ask our students to do. We have to mutually build those experiences. That's why you're here today. We'll show you the experiences that we're asking our students to do, but we need for you to say, here's some other experiences that you need to do. Or you're asking them to do that, they don't really need to be doing that, they need to be doing this. So it's got to be not just getting your advice, we have to create this together. That's what we're required to do. It's about, especially this one, positive impact on students. As Dr. Lamb and I say to interns all the time, you can't hope to do that, right? Hope's not a strategy. You've got to demonstrate that you're having positive impact. And that's what we're asking and requiring them to do. 2.3 talks about digital learning competencies. North Carolina required, passed a law that required that they have digital learning competencies. We've integrated those with the other 21 competencies so that they get those, not as another set of competencies, but they're integrated. So they have that. We look at all, of course, the content. They self-assess themselves on their dispositions and their values. All of those become part of the preparation. And so I'm going to kind of speed up here and get to the point. We think of the program in terms of knowing, doing, and becoming. That's sort of the broad categories. Knowing is course content. What should administrators know? What should they be able to demonstrate? What are the skills? What should they be able to do as a result of coming through the program? And then a reflective process about where are you versus where do you need to be as a leader. So North Carolina requires, and these are all administrative preparation programs in North Carolina, in order to get a license in North Carolina, and those of you in North Carolina will be familiar with this, they have to create or write 6 evidence artifacts. And they're around different topics. So for instance, in our first semester, they do one that has to do with analysis of student learning. And they develop where the weaknesses of learning are and develop a plan for that. That's an artifact that they create. They do another one for teacher empowerment leadership, working with the culture in your building and empowering teachers. There's another one on organizational management, which is building schedules, understanding budgets. And so those artifacts, when you put them all together, those are all North Carolina educational leadership students from Murphy to Manio. They all have to do that as part of licensure. But what that actually turns into is if you put all those 6 things together, they're essentially creating a school improvement plan. So through the work in the program, they're actually creating all the things that an administrator would have to have in terms of a school improvement plan, looking at all the programs, the processes, and how they work together. And of course, over that, we have competencies. They keep a portfolio. They document the competencies. They reflect on those competencies. It's not enough to say I have communication as a competency. They have to demonstrate that. They have to show me. They have to do a reflection and say, here's how what I've done in this program shows that I have the skill of communicating or problem solving or whatever those other 21 are. That's sort of, so here's a little bit of a background that we want to share with you today. We do an exit survey. It's very important. We have a program survey. Now the university has an exit survey as well, but we have a program survey every semester that our students take. And of the exit survey, and this is probably, he talking about the university's exit on this one, David? Mm-hmm. On our university's exit, 100% of our candidates said that if they had to do it over again, they would choose Gardner-Webb again. So we feel good about that. We get a lot of course, anecdotal feedback, but that's something we look at. And then we have our first 3 semester cohorts. We now have a 3 consecutive semester program, which includes summer. Summer's a regular semester for us. That gets folks who already have a master's into the program. But after the first semester, we have a 75% retention rate. We had a 98% retention rate in summer, which is tough, because that's only a 10-week semester. But entered in final, we have a retention rate of 73. It may not sound like great, but nationally it's about 49%. So we work very hard being in an online environment. You folks know some of these learners that are already doing 1+5 full-time jobs as administrator, trying to work with a preparation program that does require them to do a lot. We put a lot of emphasis on retention, and we tie it back to the job they're doing. We tell them, if you think this is a lot now, wait till you're a practicing administrator. It's the same thing. It doesn't get any easier after this. So we try to tie everything into their preparation. Why are numbers higher? This is unique to Gardner-Webb. What I'm going to share with you is unique to us. All the programs have to do those 6 artifacts. They all have to do that. But we actually have some support systems in place that we think is pretty unique to us. One of them is each candidate will have 2 clinical coaches. They'll have 2 coaches assigned to them. There also will have someone, either in the district, but typically it's in the building, who will agree to serve as a site supervisor for the candidate. There's the instructor. We have the peers, whoever the program they're in with, their peers, and then there's also evaluators. We use third-party evaluators to evaluate all of their work. Doesn't know them, but follows the rubric that's been created. And it's not a secret. The students know the rubric. They know the standards. They know the expectations. But we use a third-party evaluator. But I think one of the things that makes us unique is coaches. We have 2 coaches. We call them Coach 1 and Coach 2. Coach 1 is the coach who is the one who visits the school, establishes a relationship with the site supervisor and the students, make sure they have all the technology working. Usually it's about 1 or 2 weeks into the beginning of the program. Make sure they understand Blackboard and how that operates. Make sure they can access the internship materials and set up that relationship. And basically the coach says to you, I'm your person. Just like I was in the schools yesterday through Spartanburg and Greenville. I would always leave by saying to the administrator and to the students, if you need me, I can be here within an hour. You call me. I'm the person to help you. It doesn't matter what it is, or if you just need to talk to me. So we have someone on the front end that sort of sets the stage, and I will be that person's coach throughout the program, whether they're in 3 semesters or 5. We also have another coach who is more of an instructional support coach. So questions such as the actual artifacts that they're writing, or how do I do this particular task in this artifact? I need some support with that. So each student has 2 coaches. Has one on-site coach, also has one that's instructional coach. That is what I think, Dale, you can agree with me or not. I think our support, our wraparound services for our candidates is what keeps our retention where it is. because they got expertise available to them at any time.
Mhm.
Of course, our relationship with the site supervisor is so important. We learn as much from them, we think, as they're going to learn from us. They give us ideas, and we come back and we put our heads together and say, here's what I learned at this particular school. So we try to constantly innovate into that. So we typically bring in about 170 students a semester, new students, MELS students, who want to take this journey of school leadership. Therefore, in conclusion, you folks play a critical role in us developing and improving. We have to have your input, and we need your expertise in doing that. So what we're going to spend our time talking about this afternoon is we need to know from you what content is missing. What are we missing? We need to know about what can we do to make that clinical experience even more dynamic and even more effective. Because we want to be able to give our candidates the opportunity to develop. It's about growing over the time they're in the program. What are some skill sets that you see that we need to make sure that our students have? CAPE also added a new requirement in the last couple of years about developing an ethical framework, about ethics as a practicing educator. So all of those things that you see in dispositions, which are the values and beliefs that we need. All right, any questions on that? That's sort of my kind of an overview of the program. I want to now talk about some of the specifics of our program. Anybody have any questions? No, it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. Kind of the nature of it for us. Okay, so our courses are 6 credit hours each. The students take 1 course per semester. They take the course, and then they have an internship that accompanies the course. That's where the coaches contact, visit, and support. We use technology, Zoom, which we're doing live today. We do that quite often. Our coaches will do Zoom sessions as part of it, but they take these are 5 courses. The first course is entitled Executive Leadership in a 21st Century Change Environment. In a minute, I'll show you the outcomes that we have lined with that. And 602, Research and Assessment for 21st Century Leaders. 603 is Resource Management, which is 2 things primarily, law and finance. We teach them those are 2 things that get you in jail quicker than anything. So we do a whole course on law and finance. 604 is Curriculum Instruction. And 605 is 21st Century School Leadership, more of the managerial leadership, not generic, but not just school-based leadership. So I want to take some time, and I want you to talk among yourselves, and then Dale, if you'll help me, we're going to write some things down and get some feedback on that. So I want to start with, let's look at our course in 601 and show you what we're asking students to do.
Please remember that this is for the full master's program. The add-on licensure people only do 1, 3, and 5. That's why they're just 3 semesters.
1, 3, 5. Now, the content for those add-ons, we bring in the 602 and the 604. But it makes it compact. If they're doing 3 semesters instead of 5, it really packs that in. So it's not like they miss everything in 02 and everything in 04. Our instructors who teach the add-on integrate.
Before you get into detail, can you differentiate this on the surface between 601 and 605? Both of them are 21st century school leadership.
Yes.
I know this one is standard.
Yeah, and we look at the outcomes, and then can you think of anything right off the top that's more like an introduction to?
Okay.
It's kind of a survey.
The first one is the principal, basically. We used to call it the principalship. They take and go through every part of being that. The MEL 605 is executive leadership, where we start with leadership theory and learning how to be an executive leader beyond the school level. It's kind of like one's training you to be principal, be an assistant principal, wanting to be a principal, and the other one's training you to be a principal, wanting to be a superintendent. That's probably not the most eloquent way to put it, but that's what defines the content.
Yeah. All right, so here are our learning outcomes for 601, and then I want us to talk about 601 and get some feedback from you. So here's what we list. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 outcomes for the course. Number 1, demonstrate skill in facilitating the articulation, formulation, dissemination of a vision. So that's one of the outcomes, vision for school administration. Number 2, knowledge of state, local, federal policy as they're relating to effective instructional programs and professional growth. 3, knowledge of school climate means to assess and evaluate the climate, develop a comprehensive plan to address climate through managing operations, resources, promote safe, effective learning environment. 4, manage resources by focusing on effective organization, management of finance and personnel materials. Again, kind of an overview. Number 5, demonstrate knowledge, ability to articulate a personal education philosophy based on the standards that relate to effective. And finally, demonstrate knowledge of 21st century executive standards. Those are our outcomes. That's what we list our 6 outcomes from that particular course. So my question, first thing I want you to talk about with someone is executive leadership in the 21st century change environment. What needs to be added? What else do we need to have in there? What are we missing? What's the opportunity we have in 601 that you think we should incorporate?
Let me add that we start them out in 601 doing research on how to set up and run a PLC. That's part and parcel of that, and then we do a lot of work off of that PLC work with teacher evaluation, efficacy, teacher empowerment, staff development. That's kind of the way that goes, but we kind of base it off of 115C 288, duties and responsibilities of the principal, and everything. You know, it says you got to develop a school improvement plan, says you have to do a fire drill, all the things that are in that list we try to incorporate into that initial class. But it's basically that first one, everything works off of a PLC.
Because one of the artifacts requires them to develop a PLC. And again, the artifacts are for all principal prep programs in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. They all have to do the same. They all have to do this document. What else do we need to consider with the end there?
How hard is it for you to meet all those objectives in one semester? Do you typically have to play catch up to get everything in, or do you?
I had a full head of hair when we started. 7 years, it's all falling out. It's like your hair's on fire in that 601.
How do you find that hours to that semester?
Well, it's a 6-hour course. If it's face to face, they have to do 4 hours every week, or summertime they have to do 6 hours every week for 10 weeks. If it's online, obviously, the expectation is that you would match the number of hours that you would normally be in class plus double that for the outside work. So we expect them to do 8 hours a week in terms of their classwork, and we expect another 1 hour a day in clinical work. The 80 hours a semester requirement works out to 1 hour a day on clinical work. So we're expecting on a weekly basis, what's that, 9 or 10 hours? And that doesn't count other things that they might be doing. So that's why we lose 20% in the first semester. But that's a lot better than most other folks because we have support. I made a second visit to a new student yesterday morning. I've already been to her school twice. I got her down off the ledge, but that's normal. I think, Vera's been through this program most recently. Please don't judge her because she was my student and intern. She's great, but she could speak to that probably better than me, what the load is, especially in the first course.
Okay, what is the determination of whether we're going to do that or not? Because it was a feeling of hands on fire. I was sitting in a district position though at the time and saw the most that left was just classroom teachers. And so, right, it was about an hour, I would say 2 hours a day of kind of expected work. But you do see the people that were there lasted the entire session, and we were still connected in some form of fashion. You do have this sense of community, and just again, you really had that partnership with one another because you're going to go through and hope that the job we all start to.
Now, Robin has hired one of our graduates for this semester, one of our really good graduates as well, and we talked earlier, and she can speak to that in terms of maybe how that relates to once you get them on the job, the experience that they went through.
I think she is so well prepared, and I'm so proud of her because, I mean, I want Garden Web to be producing the very, very best. And she has come with just such a work ethic that I think maybe has to sort of naturally be there. But I think that this might be weeding out those who have it and those who don't have it. And she has such a work ethic and such a drive to just absolutely be the very, very best and to just make everyone so proud. And she nobody's going to know every little program or every little thing that everybody does, but it's her willingness to learn and work at it until she gets it that makes her such a great person.
And we explained that the 601 is not designed to weed people out. I mean, that's not the goal, but it pretty close mirrors the day-to-day job. And, you know, if you don't have organizational skills, you will either develop them or go away. And so we don't make it to weed them out, but it does weed some out because they'll say, this is more than I've bargained for, or can do, or want to do at that particular time.
And so we get those emails that, you know, at this place in my life, I really can't do this. And so we don't design it as a weed out. We try to get boots on the ground to you within 2 weeks of you starting the program. We're out there in your school. You have a content coach that's online with you all the time, can be online with you 24/7. And then we have a person that comes and visits you. But we need to know right away whether you can handle it or not. And as Robin said, you know, that work ethic. I know Romy had that work ethic. You know, she probably made it through in spite of me, but she had the work ethic. But she had to. You got to get good or get gone. And so when we talk about our retention rates, some of those didn't choose to leave. We chose for them to leave. If you can't catch the gear to be with us, then you need to pull over and reconsider.
Because it doesn't slow down when you get in the job.
No.
This may not be an appropriate question for this part of the discussion, but at what point in the program do you focus on helping the candidates develop an ability to communicate and articulate to the public rather than, you know, demonstrating and creating artifacts? The problem that I see sometimes is that we have good candidates who can create good work products, but they can't share that with the community. They can't communicate with either policymakers or other stakeholders.
Our very first communication competency that they have to work, very first competency, that they have to work on is that communication competency. And it must show growth and development, as you're talking about. If I see an email as a representation of your communication competency the first round, that's fine. But if I see an email in the third round, you better be the webmaster. I better have seen the growth over that. We have them do them in rounds. You can't just go in and show me 3 communication competencies from your first semester. I want to see one from your first, your third, and your fifth, and that the level of that has to grow as you grow, so that you're exactly right. So that dispositionally, their soft skills, communication skills, are just as important or more important as whether they can develop a school budget and doing the numbers. Can you communicate effectively? So that is that's the first competency that we have ours work on, is being able to do that. But that's a great question. That's good.
I'm going to broaden on what you said communication, but soft skills in general, because I've seen people who were excellent assistant principals and got into principalship and completely derailed because of soft skill issues. Dealing with parents, dealing with board members, dealing with district office staff.
And so, soft skills, dispositional skills.
Soft skills in and outside the school.
Yes, and dealing with all types of stakeholders. Dealing with the critical problem solving, the critical thinking, the creativity.
Conversation.
Conflict management.
The ability to deal with people. Both inside your building and outside the building.
Yes. Now,
the difference between big people and little people.
Yeah, I think
It's very different.
from a district perspective, we have a lot of people that are very good at writing school board plans, writing running PLC. They're really good at that. Where we struggle as superintendents, find people, really use people, motivate people, they can deal with people and get people to you know, move schools and different places. And it's hard to put a description on it, but they've got that it factor. That really, they can handle difficult situations and not make a bigger man.
And obviously that's paramount. I mean, the Gallup organization has developed, the procedure, the perceiver procedure that, and we actually work with our students on that. All of our 605s, unfortunately, have to deal with me through the principal perceiver, where we make them do Strength Finder from Rath and Conchi on their soft skills, but they also have to come through me dispositionally, where we work with them about their dispositions, their soft skills. I'm honest, I'm ethical, I can communicate, I have empathy, all of those things that the Gallup organization says is good. And that's been a change in our emphasis recently, from just, can you do this and put a check in the box, but developing that soft skill to go along with it. But that's great feedback. We need more of that. So that's good feedback.
So I wanted to ask a question. So you said that you require these communications from them, but is there specifically any intentional teaching on the ways to give feedback, or the way body language, just as you're listening, just listening skills?
Can you back that up just to, let's see. Can you back your slides up? One more. Okay. See that peer circle down there? What we require them to do, and we put this in a year or so ago, we require them to do peer reviews. We require them, even if they're an online class, they have to get on Zoom and do it face to face, where they have to deliver bad news. They have to evaluate one another's work, and they have to be honest. We give them a rubric. You talking about uncomfortable when they first start, it doesn't go well at all. But we make them do that, and we make them do it every semester. And we grade them. They don't just do it just to be ugly to one another. We grade them on, are they progressing in how they're able to deliver bad news to the client system, and how they can interact on that. It's not as good as when we do it in the classroom setting, but it still works. But yes, we believe that's a big part of it is you don't always have good news.
Yeah, I think that's a big factor in what I see, just in general, but specifically, in my team that is from here as well. It's that ability to, or just know how to communicate effectively, especially giving feedback that is not positive.
Yes. We have a rubric that they have to follow, and we make them do at least, they vary from 4 to 6 of those every semester that they're in the program. They have to organize it. They have to be the Zoom master. They have to be the one that takes their colleagues to task. And if they don't, their grade is dependent upon how well they did, because we're watching we see the same work. And if you say, oh, it's all, it's good, kind of like, the old American bandstand, it's fun, it's quick, I can dance to it, I give it a 95. No, if it's a 75, we know that.
All right, any other 601
I just want to make a comment about a few things I heard a few people say that I think is true, and what I'm seeing in my current assistant principal that just graduated from your program is that some others that I've had experience with lately come with the mindset of, oh, that's done, check the box. Everything is iterative in this job. Nothing's ever done. And it's always a reflective and learning. So when you say, well, you have to do this, and then 3 courses later, I want to see improvement on this, because that's what it is. It's everyday reflection, it's iterative, it's what could I have done differently, how could I handle that better, and that's what I'm really seeing out of her, and it's not that, oh, this is done, check the box, move on, because the box is never checked.
I would add too, I think that's such a good point, valid point, that the need, just like with MTSS, we have to focus on the process. Sometimes we focus on the accomplishment or the end result, the product or the paper, whatever it is, but focus on the process, because if you get process right, the process is a lot like culture. If you get process right, you get culture right, most everything else take care of itself. And I think that's sometimes where, young leaders, we probably all are like that as well, that miss that, they want the end outcome and don't focus on the process. The other thing, and I don't know if this is a Gardner Webb thing, I think sometimes even, as a school district, we own a lot of this too, is the leadership maturity, in that young leaders or we're forcing them to mature as a leader too fast, and so they don't have an opportunity to grow and learn and make mistakes. I just know that of probably some people that we've had to force to grow up too quickly and it really derail some of their leadership potential and create some situations for them where they may not be able to recover because they were forced along that pipeline too fast and they weren't able to do that. So I think somewhere we've got to get folks to think it's not a 1-year AP and a principal, or it's not a 2-year principal and then you're ready to there's nothing wrong with taking an opportunity to really learn and that on-the-job training is so important. Putting what you learned at Gardner-Webb or in the practice and seeing that. And it's okay to fail sometimes because some of my biggest lessons I learned are lessons I learned from failure, and it's like, hey, learn that eye on stove hot, and not it's not a permanent scar, it's just a little one. But you remember that.
That'll leave a mark.
That's right. And sometimes we've had leaders that have had to learn too fast, and their scars are permanent. And it's difficult to live up.
You can destroy somebody's confidence in your life, and it is hard, it's extremely difficult to go back and recoup that confidence, especially if you feel like, that they've lost, you've lost the principal's confidence. And one of the questions that I had was, how do you select the principals that these people will work with? Is it just where they happen to be?
They self-select. And they go to their principal, Robin's principal at Parsley in Wilmington. And Pam Cannon was one of my former interns there. And Pam, when she decided she wanted to be in the program, she had to get an appointment with Robin and go in and sit down with her and say, I want to be in this program. Will you allow this? And Robin has the right to say yes or no. And she also has the right to say, I will let you, but I'm going to assign you to my assistant principal to do this. So it's self-selecting. And that's part of the reason why we have boots on the ground within 2 weeks, because sometimes we want somebody to look us in the eye and shake our hand and say, yes, we'll work with this person.
Right. And I think that's a very critical piece to it, because the quality, like he was saying, pushing somebody too fast to grow. If you don't have a quality principal who's expending your energy to try to grow someone, anybody can be put in a position of authority, but where they have been properly taught, which takes us to like the part about finance, educational finance. I don't know about you guys, but when I went through my educational set of courses, finances were the weakest area that we had. And I guess that is for everybody, because every financial situation is different in terms of how you train people and all that, but not having the knowledge in that, I was fortunate. I did have a principal that were there that really stick and work really me, but I think that part of your program is very, very crucial, that the right people are training in a hard spending.
Now, part of what we do in 603 is not just a textbook. We require them through their activities, which link back to we try to integrate all this stuff together. So some of the activities that we have them do in 603 speak to finance. We have them go out and interview the financial secretary. We have them interview the principal. We have them determine how their local budget is determined. We do the practical part of it. Not only does that feed, supports the classwork they do, but they can also count those as clinical hours as well. And so one of the things that we've been tasked with trying to do, to your point, is try to integrate the real with the ideal, so that we don't just have you reading a book over here and then you do something over here. We want you to understand the relationship between the two. But to the point made here, I am guilty, and these ladies can tell you, I am guilty of telling them that they're only new to lunchtime the first day. With 1 and 2 year assistant principal contracts, you got to get good now. You can't wait. You can't say in April, I'm new, if you were hired in August. They're going to be making a job decision on you. One of my friends is superintendent up in the mountains, and he said that's the worst. Todd Holden, you might know Todd. He was at West Iredell as principal. That's where I met him. That he and I talk quite often, and one of the things that he's really concerned as well is that we're pushing young people so fast, and we're putting so much burden on them so quickly. But that's the nature of the business. It's 1 and 2 year contracts.
Well, to add to that point, we literally only we've moved to a point of, because of a board who wants us to grow our own, and we also realize we tend to keep the candidates who have a connection locally, otherwise people are on the move. But we can't even find enough external candidates, as probably every other system has. But we don't hire anyone, and the mindset of an assistant principal for life is not a reality anymore. If we can't see the potential for that person on day one to when they be a principal, I don't extend the offer. And then the second thing is, I have moved people out of the assistant principalship in the last 7 years who probably had good evaluations. Our board articulated a reason. I got through with the attorneys and we ended the contract, that it wasn't that they weren't doing the job of assistant principal well, that they weren't progressing to become a principal, and this is a training ground, and you're taking up a spot, and we're gonna put somebody else in. So I don't know, the mindset of the program is always that I'm progressing toward a principalship, perhaps or perhaps not, but I'm not interested in hiring anyone who doesn't at least see that potential in themselves and that we can't identify in them on some level.
And we talk about that there's 4 distinct levels of interviews. This is the part that I work with them on, the cattle call interview, you know, the virtual in the big districts or whatever we're going to do. And then, you know, the parent interview, the lay people, where you have to be able to translate the educational jargon so that you can see if you can communicate with parents or not. And then you have the principal interview, and then you have the superintendent interview. And a lot of our candidates are like, the superintendent's going to interview me? I said, absolutely. When I worked with Mo in Charlotte, and he became superintendent in Guilford, you know, I asked Mo, why are you out interviewing in a big place like Guilford? Why are you interviewing assistant principal candidates? He said, because I can see if they're going to be principals or not. I'm not going to hire them if they can't be principals. And that clicked with me a few years ago, that like 601, we're training you to be a assistant principal, wanting to be a principal. 605, when we get you there, you know, we're training you for this job now, but with an eye on the next job. Because if people can't see the potential in you, they're not going to give you the first chance to begin with. And so that's why we need feedback from you folks. Is, you know, I've got a list of things that I have them do, but how relevant is my list? I talk with principals every day. I was in a school this morning. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a necktie on. But how relevant is this list in terms of what you're looking for? How does this list translate into, can you, if they can do these things or do these things through their clinical, will you be able to see it? Or does this project into becoming a principal? Because we're training APs. Nobody gets the battlefield promotion anymore. Everybody has to be an AP first. And so we're trying to do, and I have 3 different levels. And basically this is all principal stuff up here. And this is AP stuff down here. Because nobody gets, you know, this is technician level stuff, technical skills and supervision. I figure after you've done busted you a couple of times, you probably got that. I want to see all this leadership stuff that leads you to be an executive leader, principal, and beyond. That's what we do. And so, yeah, we're training them to be APs, but with an eye on that next one, so that hopefully you folks can see that and we'll hire them. And hopefully they'll know what to do when they get out there.
Go back. To a point she made, and we're working on it as a district because we just went through the work of leaders with all of our principals, all our district level staff. The greatest weakness that was shared amongst all of us was being able to give critical quality feedback and be comfortable doing that in a way that's not intimidating, it's not degrading, but we're working as professionals here, so when I give you feedback, you don't see it as an attack. You see it as an opportunity for growth. I think that was the point you were making, and I think I'm assuming it's true everywhere.
And I think it goes both ways. You have some people that will couch it so much in positive that people will miss the negative, so that's not good either. Right?
I don't have that problem, but some people.
Some people, yeah, but it's that happy medium where you're being truthful, but you're.
This is Carmen. She was one of our wonderful clinical site supervisors, and she is in Charlotte. Joe Newberry was with her. Joseph Newberry was with her, and I was so impressed. That's why I asked her to come today. I was so impressed that she was so involved with hers. She's what you want. Robin was involved with hers as well, but in a large district, speaking to, you were talking about, Carmen was intimately involved with Joseph every day, not just every once in a while, every day. And unfortunately, all principals can't do that. but she made time to do that. I know we really can't make up for that on our end, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make up for, what if they don't have Carmen Concepcion? What if they don't have her? She's perfect. She's great. She's with Joe every day. Every time I come there, she'd be with Joe. How many times were there? A dozen times? Every time she was with Joe. And I was like, I can't believe this. How much time and effort she's putting into making him the kind of administrator that she wants and that the district wants. But we don't get that with everybody. And that goes back to your point. They're self-selecting. We have to take whoever that we get.
And don't tell Dale's passionate about this program. We need to move on so we can get through these. We've got 40
I
minutes.
know. Thank you.
Yeah. What does that piece look like? I know you got a list. Is it all task oriented or is it experiences?
All the above.
All the.
Yeah, but we should get
Mhm.
comments.
And
All right,
We have them all.
602, moving along, 602, as you remember, was about research. Here are the outcomes, there's 4 listed. Students will learn basic principles of research, use those to investigate the research of their addresses on identifying the problem. Uh-oh. Put it again.
Cancel.
Won't let me cancel. Okay. All right. Utilizing accepted research criteria with sound support, student will be better equipped to resolve educational problems and dilemmas. Provides candidates knowledge, skills needed to understand measurement and assessment. They relate to current trends, state and national testing, and finally, special attention given national state district testing methodologies. That is 602 research.
I've had about 9 assistant principals over my career. I've only ever had one that understands how to research something and to do it effectively, to be able to create a product at the end and to be able to use it for something. So I think that's huge. I mean, we're constantly looking for ways to improve, ways to increase rigor. Looking for even sister schools where we can compare data and they are absolutely clueless as to how to do that.
That involves also value-added assessment, teachers how to, or administrators how to teach teachers to use it for instructional improvement, not evaluation purposes, but for instructional improvement. We're also, one of the new concepts we're putting in there now is the latest research on improvement science, if you have any familiar or heard of improvement science.
Yeah.
Kind of a new concept that we're.
This kind of ties in finance as well with just general program evaluation.
Mhm.
Evaluate programs that we're using in our buildings to see if we're getting bang for our buck.
Mhm.
Because so many times we spend that money year after year after year for something that really may not be providing the need that we need.
Mhm.
And understanding how to produce quantitative data out of programs and not just, anecdotal information.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we that's a focus, database decision making, but the data has to be quantitative. We're laughing at one another. I'm the quantitative person here. Although I talk too much, I'm the quantitative person. He's actually doesn't talk, he's the qualitative person. Kind of works that way somehow.
Anything else on 602? Okay, and if you think of it, we can come back to it. Very good. All right, 603. There's a lot of these. Interpreting general statutes pertaining to law, analyze school policies and procedures, skills in legal research, recall, summarize the landmark cases that have impacted education, legal awareness, understanding the case law, legal guidelines for the expenditure of funds, develop instruments that evaluate funding success and providing equity and adequacy for needs, knowledge-based tools necessary to carry out school site finance operations, key elements of resource management, understand, develop proper procedure process for developing local budget, law and finances. The 2 courses that will merge to make the resources for 21st century. So from a money and law point, think of a skill set day one that you want your administrators to have from day one.
I'll just share an interesting side note. We do it in the AP Academy,
Mhm.
and we ask them to give the topics. We meet with them every other month. And then I ask the same question when someone's becoming a new principal. The same question to AP, same question to the new candidate. And I'll say, tell me where you need the most support. Tell me what is the thing that frightens you most about becoming principal. And invariably, it's always school finance, no matter, so I'll just add that to say, no matter what you do, it seems like we can't do enough to prepare them. They feel like that's the thing, and maybe we've told them so much this thing that can land you in jail and all the jokes that we make. But it is the place that I don't know how you really create that real experience for them yet.
What about simulations?
We do have one financial simulation, but it's kind of at the, it's kind of a superintendent level.
Mhm.
You get a budget, you get a spreadsheet, and you have, these number of schools, and then you allocate using the spreadsheet, and that's pretty good from the 30,000 foot view. One of the things that we run into is the technical skill of budgeting, because it can be very different from one school and one district to the other, and so we don't know the technical skills. We try to teach some of the basic enduring concepts. For example, money matters, but how you spend money matters more. That's an enduring concept. It's not a technical skill, but that's a value belief they have to understand. It's how you spend it as much as how much you have.
I don't know how to clearly articulate this, but sometimes the knowledge base is one thing, but the ability to, and this is back to something that we talked about at the very beginning, the ability to collaborate, articulate, know when it's the green light, when it's the yellow light, when it's the red light, when to ask, when to realize this is not, something that I need to proceed with without caution. One of the things that we try to illustrate to our principals.
Overall, or just related to finance?
Overall, but I think especially related to finance and law, is a lot of times people go, oh, I thought this was like something, and they misinterpreted something. It's so much better to ask. Let's think about this collectively and not really get in. Don't get on that island by yourself too. And so just the experiences to really know, even sometimes it looks clean, it looks clear. Let's talk about that. Let's make sure.
Do you differentiate between the macro in terms of how districts are funded as far as federal, state, local? And I think that's the scary part for most people, because it's so complicated with the funding formulas. But once you get down to the micro level at the school level, it becomes a little bit easier, because you finance person in the district, put a code on every fund. So I'm assuming most people, when they say I'm afraid of finance, are they talking about the bigger picture for the district? Or
No, I think at that point they're talking about letting accountability as a principal, and I would even roll into like this major issue we have, that if principals engaging in a contract for which they don't have the authority to do it, but they're doing it, or I would even say going back from engagement of that type of service, or
you don't want to procurement. So the procurement officer would tell you, you don't have the authority to do that. That's above a certain dollar amount.
Well, but smaller school districts don't even have procurement officers. You're lucky to have a financial secretary and then someone.
But I'm saying at some point, you would have regulations, or hopefully guidelines to say, nobody's gonna walk into the job knowing it.
no, and that's one of the first things I do as on board, is have the finance officer spend individual time with every principal, and going through the audit that occurs when we change over from one principal to the other, and that's a lesson learned. But it still seems to be, I don't know if it's that they don't understand all the tools available to them, or the support that will be available. And ideally, I really wish they wouldn't come in thinking they know everything and go down this path,
You know where I see they make the biggest mistakes? It's not with the money they get from the district, but it's local money they raise through their PTA clubs, where they feel like they have freedom of it. That's where they make judgment mistakes with that money.
We can't help control that. We can't help them,
Honestly,
Failure.
as a new principal, I'm thinking of school hard knocks here, right? So when I became a principal, I didn't have a competent secretary. So I took it upon myself to do the secretary training. And I think that was the most helpful to me, because that kind of told me like where this money could be moved to this money, if it's this budget code, or, you know, what can discretionary funds be, or in what, you know, because I use this for food, and that's where you get tripped up, like your discretionary funds and all that. And I found it useful, so I don't know if there's maybe some component that you can all include where it's like an overview from the secretary perspective of what the audit entails and all of that.
We have 14 or 15 activities in 603 that are all based on interview the secretary, interview somebody about HR practices, interview your principal about these things. But the bottom line on all of it, we tell them we have them go somewhere, learn something. It's law and finance. And every week they've got to do something. But the bottom line we tell them is you need to know what you don't know. And what that means is as soon as you get your job, you need to get trained. You need to go get teacher certified to do evaluations. Vera and I are talking about that. You need to sit down and go over an audit, financial audit. You need to learn a funding source. You need to go get trained immediately. You need to learn Power Source. You need to learn Power School. You need to learn all those, because it's different on the administrator side of the table than it is the teacher side of the table. You think you know those things, but you don't.
And beneficial is, I think, a future administrator is the interview CFO. I don't know that they really know enough. I mean, I remember those days. I didn't know enough to really understand what they were talking about. It was good class activity.
Yeah.
But it's like
Exactly.
It's almost like you need to spend a year as assistant principal and then go back to class and say, okay, now I really realize what that means. And then after you're a principal, I mean, I was fortunate. I had a great mentor, and I could go back and say, even in central office, and say, all right, now I really realize that you can set on the job.
It is.
But that wisdom to go back.
And that's what we tell them. We want you to go and know what you don't know. That's the whole point of them going and interviewing these people. When they come back, their head's spinning. I don't know what they said. Well, that's a good thing. Now you won't think you know it all, and you'll go get trained as soon as you get the opportunity.
Then I think the battle with them then is, but I mean, when you're contracting, oh my gosh, I need to act like I know it. But really, you can just go ahead and assume that even at this late date in my life, I don't probably know. And so, but I think even as sort of hard as law and policies and everything sort of sound hard, I think that's when soft skills and communication is even more pivotal, because you're not going to go to somebody and say, you are in violation of blah, blah, blah. No. Buddy, won't you? Had a few people a little concerned this morning.
Yeah.
You got to sort of, and so that's where those soft skills and communicating with your stakeholders or having that relationship with the auditor. So when you really don't know, just call and say, Nancy, don't know unless I found this, or I don't, and report when you think something's happened with that PTA money. I did that this summer. I went and found something that I didn't know a teacher had done, and just went right in the auditor's office, shut the door, and said, "Okay, this is what happened. What are we going to do?" And I think when you build that relationship with people like that, then they know that they're going to work with you, and I think that's just the key.
I'm listening to everybody, and everything seems to be on the macro and the micro, but do you guys also do things with trying to help them to understand the fiduciary responsibility of spending money on programs or tutors or whatever, and reflectively looking at how that money is spent? Like you talked about, it's not how much money you get, it's how you use it. So do you guys go back to that as well? Because that's another part of, it's another layer that might not be, we're talking about, let's stay out of jail, let's make sure we use the right code, but then, okay, now what has been the best thing for the children? How are we evaluating, and you brought up Leslie's program evaluation, it's one of the things that you guys did very well in our doctoral program, was looking at program evaluation, but reflectively looking at whether that money actually got outcomes. I don't know if that's something that
We have a 10-point algorithm that we develop, data-based decision making, that we work with them through this class. That's the bottom line, is how much gain did you get versus how much money you spent. It factors in funding source. Did it come from local, state, federal? Is it grant? How many personnel does it incur? We make them look at everything. And then how much gain did you get? But we now have converted to a standard deviation scale, so that you can say, I got a 1 million point gain, but the scale was 1 billion, so it really wasn't much. So we make them convert that to standard deviation. I'm actually going to do that lesson for a charter school. I'm going to do 2 sessions with them. What Jeff was talking about, we offer these services, and so I met at Cabarrus Charter Academy last week, and the principal said we could really use this for our staff here, understanding how to do this. And so I'm going to go back and do that lesson with them. But yes, we've worked with that in I teach 603. So yeah, I do an algorithm on database decision making.
It's really hard to change culture or to change someone's personality, but I don't think you can overplay someone's need to have a good mentor or a group to go to and work with when you're first starting out and you're first learning how to do all this. And I think people are afraid to ask questions.
Sure.
I think you had brought that up earlier, but they really have to realize that that's a sign of strength instead of weakness. And that has to be cultivated to constantly, double check, and go back and revisit. And like we were talking about finances, those decisions don't have to be made on the spot. And if someone's trying to make you do that, then that's even more evidence that you need to step back from it and consider it a little bit more carefully. But and it's great to have someone on your site that you can turn to about that. But if there were other issues, maybe you don't want to look stupid to your supervisor or whatever, it's always nice to have someone else that you can turn to and ask those questions of, whether it's here at the university or someone that you have connections with in the school system.
All right. One other thing, that we have 2 South Carolinians with us on the does there need to be a differentiation, particularly in 603, funding stream a little bit different, certainly taxation structure is. Do we need to differentiate, or is it local enough that we'll leave that to you to take them all when they're ready?
I would try to differentiate, because then you would really be confusing people. So I don't know about North Carolina, but South Carolina's funding formula is so complex.
It's out of whack.
It's crazy.
Ours is out of whack too.
Yeah.
I didn't share that comment, it's a different guy.
Yeah. We just try to hit the big, state, federal, state, local board of education, local school funds, and 2 of those. We try to keep it that simple for them, and we tell them, we want you to go find a copy of your school budget, and we hope it goes all the way back to the federal, but you need to do this when you get on site, because we can't, as Jeff mentioned earlier, we can't know what every district they're budgeting or their funding or what their what do you call the sheet that's non-negotiables is in terms of setting up budgets. And most districts now have a non-negotiable on setting up their schedules, but also on setting up budgets as well. We can't know what those are, so those usually aren't public, but you're right. We just try to hit the broad strokes.
So some only get the money at the building level that they're allowed to spend. Others get say-so on moving funds and stuff. So it really varies between our districts. Some still use old green bar sheets back.
When I was principal in Burke County, we actually got an allotment of capital funds there. It's the only place I've ever heard that did that at the school level based on ADM. It was amazing.
I would say I took school finance here in Indiana, but it was interesting then at the time learning a little bit. We discussed the fact that we had some folks in here that were South Carolina and North Carolina. We talked about the differences, which was helpful to me to understand that. Well, I'm not putting it on like that, but I love the idea that you all can levy and raise funds for the school board. That was interesting concept.
Yeah.
And then I
Not
think
all.
not all. So I think it's helpful.
Yeah, ours have autonomy, but after 388, they have a cap.
Right. So I think it's just helpful to students then to understand that state by state, those funding structures are different, and where we sit positions us for people to have an interest in understanding that because of our problem. Yes.
Okay, so to keep us moving, again, if you think of more, we will still gather those, but let's move on to 604. 604 is curriculum and instruction. And there's just short of 1,000 outcomes that we have for that. But several of those have to do with PLCs, instructional practices, working in PLCs, constructing a formal action plan relating to improving student learning, gap analysis, research, gathering qualitative data through observation, interview, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do you need from a curriculum instruction standpoint for administrators? Take one. They go through that lens. What skill set do they need to have when they come in?
I would say the curriculum instruction, the biggest kickback we have in the middle school. In elementary, we don't have this problem. Because everybody PLCs and everybody, they'll go and they'll do the data and whatever, but having the conversations, having the soft skills and the leadership abilities to sit in there, because the principal cannot be in every single PLC.
No.
There's no way.
Right.
They've got to have their ability to, first of all, know what the vision is of the principal so they can relate that, and to get middle school and high school people to be willing to do the data that they need
To articulate, yeah.
That is where I see us as a middle school principal, you know, having those people that will go on those meetings and start, you know, having those conversations.
Yeah.
I would argue that EC is very often overlooked when you're in a program for leadership. Actually, I went to Greensboro for my master's degree, and I signed up for an EC class at the graduate level because I wanted to learn more about it. And they were so suspicious. The professor pulled me over and said, "Why do you want to take this course?" Nobody ever from administration or leadership ever takes an EC course. And, you know, there's all the legal ramifications of it, as well as, you know, the social pieces. And I don't think they don't understand different diploma tracks. I think there needs to be much more of an overall understanding of, you know, the whole process.
No, we catch that in 603 in task 1 of the OMA. We have them assay, that's what I call it. I don't think it's research. We have them assay all the special populations in their building in terms of what they are, you know, who's in charge of them. We have them do EC 504, ESL, LEP, AIG, or gifted, talented, intervention team students, and Title I. We have them do all of that as special populations, but it's just an assay. They don't don't learn enough, but we don't do anything 604 with that. But we do have that as a component. But I agree, it needs to be stressed more. I was grading work last night since I teach 603, and they're on task 1. Grading work last night, and unfortunately, I was having to send back the feedback. You didn't say, you know, I'm not happy with your assessment of special populations in your building. You don't know enough.
Another thing that we don't do, but we know we don't do it, we don't have our students observe instruction and get feedback on teaching and learning.
We do walkthroughs, 10-minute walkthroughs is all we do. That's as much as we can require. In 602, they have to do 10-minute walkthroughs for best practices.
Are they trained on the instrument, the evaluation instrument?
In 604, yes. Vera remembers that. I probably bored her to death with that one, but yeah.
Well, and part of that is, and it doesn't necessarily have to go out in school because of confidentiality issues, but when we were developing the artifacts that we do as embedded signature set, we were at Stanford University doing some training, and one of our colleagues that we trained with was the executive director of the national boards, and has made available to us all the video clips of teaching through national boards, so we can actually have them to watch a video through national boards and do that
Do some simulations.
as a simulation. So we're putting that in there.
We're going to try to
You know,
do
North Carolina, by law, you have to give feedback after you observe instruction. You're required to do that. So that's something we've got to.
Yeah.
That's an area we know we've got.
Yeah, we're trying to get better at moving from a 10-minute walkthrough with a checklist to actually observing instruction. But that's difficult, remembering that 90% of our client system is still classroom based, and they would have to have release time, or would have to have their schedules unsynchronized, where when the person that they're working with is working with them, that you're not on planning at the same time, so you can go and observe instruction. That's something that, you know, we don't have any control over that. So we're working toward the simulation, and I'd like to see us do it more live, but we can't mandate what happens out in the buildings.
That resource, being able to observe the national board candidates is great, except one would almost assume that anyone pursuing that is probably going to be an excellent practitioner. So you're seeing folks who are doing it well. I think the one challenge is how you begin to create a candidate who can come in and work with the teachers who are not performing well. Do you-
That's what I was just referring to, is you have to unsynchronize that mentor-mentee, that doesn't do any good if you're mentoring me and I'm not a very good teacher.
And I don't know how to help.
And exactly, and when you're teaching, I'm teaching, and when we're on planning together, you have to unsynchronize. That's what we would want, that coupling, is that you go work with somebody that needs help, not that that would be, that's our ideal.
There's an awful lot of legalities involved with doing something like that, but you could make an arrangement with a couple of school systems that when they videotape teachers who are on MIPS, mandatory improvement plans, that you would be able to use the videos for training purposes, to be able to look at what is not great instruction.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
And that's have to make their faces look blurry like they're doing.
but to that point, if you did the mentor-mentee, your clinical intern would be the mentor, and that would get around the legal problem. That's what I was referring to. That way, I guess we can require. I'd like for us to eventually, but I don't guess we can do that. Is that part of this? Is that you would serve as a mentor, and that you would have to be able to have those critical conversations and give that feedback to the mentees. I'd like to see that somewhere down the road, but right now, in the interim, Bruce is pointing at his watch, and in the interim, we're going to try to do some simulations,
And I think,
get us started.
I think the challenge is when that relationship's occurring within the school. I think it's hard to be, even going back to having a peer evaluator, just never found that folks are willing to give the type of feedback that moves instruction forward. And this would be one idea, and I don't know how you pull this off, but I was given a good opportunity, as a high school teacher, that a principal who ultimately hired me allowed me to come and do part of my internship in his school working when I was on as a peer evaluator. So I was in at least a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And it removed some of that experience that I think we all have when we're in our own school wanting to give feedback to somebody. Like, I saw you doing that. It gave me a different feel. It felt more like what it often felt like to be an assistant principal working through the evaluation process and being a peer mentor among the school.
Yeah, one of the points on 604 is dealing with teacher working conditions survey. That I know y'all have a working conditions kind of survey too in South Carolina. How valuable is that for you guys in terms of principalship preparation? We do a lot with that, but is that something that you're using in your LEAs that you're expecting leaders to be able to know and do? It goes back to the research piece on 604.
I use it with my principals. The challenge is it's it's biennial offered, and so then we try to recreate if there's a particularly difficult area identified by the staff, then I'll have the principal work with that somewhat, trying to focus on that, because that instrument is said not to be about the principal, but I think many times teachers use it as a way to sing that principal. And I always tend to ask the principal, don't go back and say, look, okay, you're ready to make 30% on the support of teachers, but how do we address the school improvement team? Look at an opportunity for improvement. I do use it. I find it not to be that helpful just because of the frequency of it. And in a small school, 2 disgruntled teachers can tank.
Blow you out.
Pretty much. So
I use it as, I work it into their evaluation. So we look at the parent surveys, student surveys, and teacher surveys. And when you have areas, ours is only once a year. So when you have areas yearly that come up with that principal, and I ask them, you need to address this with your staff. Obviously, there's an issue here. If you want to do it with your leadership team, or if you want to do it as a whole group, it needs to be addressed, and your professionals, they need to be able to speak to you and feel comfortable bringing out how they feel about the issue, why they feel climate or culture here is not good, and ways to improve it. I don't think you get better unless you can talk about it.
maybe we do use it.
I think it really goes back to some of the things that the beginning is from how do you handle it, how do you have that conversation with, it's about culture, and also from the aspect of being able to take that principle to really internalize that. Okay, this is what's saying So how do I change that? How do I adapt my culture? How do I look at that, piece and put that piece work condition survey with student growth data, put all these pieces of data, and how do I work in that? What does that mean for my school? We asked the question, we're talking about pre-construction, and after interviews, we asked the question, can this person move to school? You know, can they move to school? That's a lot of questions we sometimes ask as a leadership team when we interview folks. Do they have the ability to move to school? You know, and that's generally after we have hired somebody as an assistant principal. Like, okay, they have potential to be a principal. But then to be the next layer is, can they move to school? And in times of student growth, even if you've got a school that's good, you still need to be able to move that school. So, you know, that's a conversation, you know, that I and our assistant administrator are directing. Can they move to school? We know this person can move to school. And that's the ability to use that data for continuous improvement. So I think to the point, about the people working, so that's a really important thing but how do we use that? How do we do that? So, you know, sometimes that person will not, man, this is not where I want to be. I hate that. Well, we just, you know, I think in 2 years we'll try again. Well, how do you use that data to really improve?
One of the things that we have our candidates do when they work with the PWC is to do qualitative work. Go back and ask, you know, why is it this way? This is the numbers. Were you just angry at your principal, or is it really this way? What can we do? So we have them do a qualitative follow-up on the quantitative numbers. It's one of the things that we do.
Building for each principals to build trust in their building, where they get that good feedback, where it's not vindictive, because we all have the you know, well, I'm not gonna put this because I'm afraid somebody's gonna look at the survey, they're gonna know who it came from, they're gonna do the research, find out which computer it was. I mean, you know, who has the time to do that, but you know, to develop trust in your building, and that's, you know, from the central office, that's very important also to have that trust from the central office. That's a big one.
I would add one thing to that, and that's just the practical, I guess, experience that I've had in that is that when principals are faced with some survey response that they disagree with, you know, teachers have access to planning, or my building is clean. The survey could say 30% of the teachers think the building is clean, or 30% think the administration is consistent in discipline. But your point is valid, because the principal would say, that's not, I mean, and I don't think it's that they're just trying to make their case to me in an evaluation conference. They'll say, that's not true. I do this, and I do this, and I do that. So I think the real problem solver is, how do I make sure that I'm perceiving that I'm supporting them, but they're not feeling it? And the perceptions of my teachers match what I think is my practice. And I think that's really what that survey does for most principals, or it can be if you utilize it the right way.
If you do the qualitative work, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. The numbers are supposed to give you a starting point.
That's what I was gonna say as well, that, so as a principal, right, and their first reaction is to say, like, I can't believe they're doing that, right? They're saying that I, you know, kill myself to do this, but what is it that I'm not doing, or my leadership team is not doing, that is, not,
What you're doing might not be what they want or what they perceive.
Maybe I'm working extra for nothing, and that's something that, like, that's not the first reaction. So I know at CMS they use the insight survey for us, and it is on our evaluation. And so, you know, some of the things, yes, you know, I might be working my tail off, but they're not getting it. So that's where that gap is, and you, like, having them look at those surveys and think, so what am I not doing, right? Where is the misperception? Or am I really doing this, or is it that I think that I'm doing it?
Yeah, so we work really hard in 605 on Johari window for that very reason. You know, perception of self and the blind spot, what you can't see, because unfortunately that happens way too much. Is you're pitching, but they're not catching.
And it gets back to the communication. We're doing this because this question, and then this is how that ties back to what we're working on in the communication piece. Sometimes you have to tell them and point it out, oh yeah, okay, sure.
Do your candidates ever have like a 360 or like an emotional intelligence evaluation or anything like that? So at least they have a starting point.
In 605, we have a whole battery of self-assessment, everything from task, relationship profile, or whether they're more relationship focused versus task. They do a 360 profile. They ask others to fill it out, and they get that. All that's done in 605.
We do all that battery. That's what I was talking about. That's the kind of the next level stuff. We do Johari window, we do Lewin, we do all 360, we do all that stuff. We have them take Strength Finder, we do Gallup with them, we do all of those stuff, all of those
In
things.
basket exercise.
In basket. Yeah, that,
For them to really know themselves. Before they
Absolutely.
leave, they have to know.
exactly who they are.
And not know who they are in school, but sometimes know really, know yourself, who you really are.
Right.
Because that, in stress, that comes out.
See, that's what Gallup says. Gallup doesn't focus it all on actual school skills. Gallup says that stuff's unimportant in terms of who's going to be the best leaders in school. Gallup doesn't have anything to do with school. It has to do with your personality dispositions. I'm honest. I'm responsible. I'm on time. You know, I'm trustworthy. All of those dispositional skills. And when we train them, we tell them, they're going to ask you this trick question when they interview you superintendent's going to ask you to tell him about your strengths and weaknesses. Your strengths should always be dispositional. Your weaknesses should all be based on inexperience, things that you can fix that will grow with time. But you can't fix if you're not on time. I've interviewed people, as in our early start high school. I was high school, AA high school principal in Charlotte. We started at 6:45 every morning. I had people say, "Well, I'm not a morning person. I'm not going to hire an AP that's not a morning person." We start at 6:45 every morning. And then you better be rolling. 47 buses are going to come in. That was the point of the 4 AA. We got 3,000 kids. They're going to show up whether you're ready or not. And the traffic's going to be bad every morning, and we're going to start early every morning. So if that's not who you are, then don't come here. And so we try to teach them. We try to work with those. That's what, again, when you asked earlier, what's the difference between 601 and 605? That 605 is about knowing yourself. It's about being an executive leader, not just a principal or a school leader.
What about, two things are coming to mind and maybe I missed it, they're in there. What about, the human resources aspect, like hiring, recruitment?
We do that in 60. We do that in 603. We introduce that and then we finish it in 605.
Okay. And then how about cultural, like just culture in the
The
school?
CAP is done in 604, cultural advocacy. We do that in 604 and when they're in the curriculum semester.
And then I guess my last question is there something that takes them through like the practical application of, so in 602, I don't remember what it was, you look at data or 603, and then in the next one, you look at curriculum.
Law and
So is there
finance.
something that takes them to like looking at the data, putting together a professional development plan for the staff?
602,
Based on that.
APTEL. That's exactly what we do. Vera could speak to that. In 602, we take that data and we call it empowerment, but basically what we're doing is we're creating a staff development plan, I call it MTSS for teachers. That's what you're doing. I actually have a document that I use with mine. It's called MTSS for teachers, where we put together an overall staff development plan, or they do an overall staff development plan.
And then kind of the guideline that you gave us, I actually used as an assistant principal and gave us some support the school and movement, and that because when I came as an AP, I came as an AP of instruction at a middle school, and was able to streamline the process just using what I used in my internship. Applicable.
Very applicable, yeah. And one thing, back to the survey thing, one of the things that we're trying to get our students to make the shift is not to use data as a mirror, but as a window into what's happening. So many times they use it as a mirror on themselves, and we try to get them to move into what insight does it give you about what's happening. But if you just use it as a mirror, then you miss the point of taking it to the next level and making things better. They do it all the time. So
Again, they think it's an assessment of them, and they just and it stops there rather than using it as a starting point.
Okay, so 605, and I've pulled it up here, 21st century school leadership, and you've already mentioned Kansas opportunity to understand and practice teacher supervision, evaluation process used in state and district. Oh, that's really a carryover from 604 judgments, but it's basically leadership, executive leadership 101. They read some John Maxwell and other executive leaders. And again, self-assessment, working on who they are as leaders.
Collins, Good to Great. That's one of our big books, and that one is Good to Great. We work on that, getting the right people getting on the bus and getting them in the right seat, Hedgehog, all those things. We work really hard on them with Collins, but we do a lot of self-assessment. Johari Window, you know, Lewin 360. We do a lot of that to try to get them to know who they are. And we finish up with Rath and Conchi Strength Finder, where they have to identify their 5 best strengths and their 5 worst strengths, and put a plan together on how they're going to address those, which feeds right into Gallup, of course.
So any other feedback?
About anything related to.
Yeah.
Something that you've not covered that you say, that's a gap in our program, in our Mills program.
I don't know, there's a gap in your program, I'm just going to give an observation that I've seen in some newer assistant principals in that. There was something good about the old mindset that understanding the role of the assistant principal was really a point of support. And I'm concerned that what I shared with you earlier, that sometimes they're trying to step over the body of the principal to become principal, which to me is not a leadership trait. And so I think being mindful, and I think your comment earlier, you talked about, are they able to understand that their role in a PLC is that they need to be following the lead of the principal, implementing, the principal in that school does set the vision for that school, the same way you ask the superintendent board to set that for the district, that assistant principal is not undermining the work of the principal. And sometimes I see it where they'll communicate, you know, the don't shoot the messenger needs to be eliminated. That is a lack of leadership. And I hear that too frequently because that's when they're communicating what the principal asks. So they're not assuming the ownership for the difficult messages that they might have to deliver. Skills that we're talking about in conversation. Don't shoot the messenger, but the principal says that. That's always when the principal gets credit for it, is when it's not pleasant, and then they want to take the credit for it when it, you know, I created this great new program where we're going to do this, as if the principal wasn't involved. So you'll see them almost wanting to communicate that, and so it's not, it doesn't reflect well on them as a leader in that role. And so as much as they want that role of principal one day, they need to understand the job that they have. But that's out of line comment, but it is something.
No, and that's why I said that if you'll see that, and that point is well taken. The list of activities that require them to do, or suggested activities, again, half of them are AP and half of them are leadership things, to remind them. And I've seen some lists from some place that were all leadership kinds of things, but to remind them, and this is a clinician level job that you're training for. We'll project whether you can do the leadership things or not, but you have to, you know, you're a worker bee still. And that your job is to support the principal. And so one of the two documents I really like on this are both from Richard DeFore. One is how to set up a PLC, and the other one is on this charge setting on how that you have to monitor and extend the vision to all of them, how to monitor all of your PLCs, and that, you know, the new AP has to be the person who shares that vision. You can't just say that, you know, it's Jeff's idea. You have to own it as well, and you have to support that person. So we use those two documents with them.
I will always like that with principal or assistant, they came from central office. Yeah.
Right.
On that.
Going back to your point too, Jen, by the end of my career, I realized, and people would, it kind of got to be a joke, I've been an assistant principal a semester. You know, I'm ready to be a principal. And I think that's human nature. We think we're ready sooner, but that whole notion of supporting and learning as you grow, I think is.
I can almost pinpoint the places where I have climate issues, but sometimes it will link back to the relationship between the principal and assistant principal. That principal, the assistant principal is undermining the leadership in an effort to seem like the true leader, and it can destroy the school.
Vera and I had that conversation at lunch today.
That point,
It would be a situation where I'm a principal coming in, but I've been within the cluster. I never had a say in my AP, and they gave me somebody who actually knows people that they just put in that position and has actually not finished their clinical work. So we just had to have a conversation with HR about what happened with my 60-something evaluations in a very large school, but is that all now on me? And at the same time, there is a probational licensure. So what happens when somebody now has the conversation because they're not happy with it? what does that put now on me as a 15 principal? So, yeah, I'm working.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do, completely.
I want to acknowledge, we've had some comments from our folks that are online. They've done some comments here, and so we'll capture those comments as well. As you've been talking, they've been typing. And so we appreciate their work and their contribution there. We'll incorporate that in the appropriate places on this. Let me kind of call us to a close. Our time is almost up. We're going to respect your time. We told you to be out at 3. We'll take this information. We will take it back, and you tell these guys are knowledgeable about what they do. I think we've got a good program, but we want to make it better. We'll take this information back and inform the work that we're doing. We'll hopefully be able to, in subsequent meetings with you all, share with you some of the things that we're doing that are a result of the input that you've given us, things that we can incorporate or make sure that we're doing in the program. So I want you to know that. You have the dates that we're meeting again coming up in November. I believe it's the 14th, and then again on over in March. I hope you'll pencil those in on your calendar. I know you're busy people, and we likely will have some of the folks who've joined us online today will join us online then, but we will meet online, so we'll be back together again, unless you want to come over here and join us, and while we conduct the meeting from here. It might be Janet and Stephen, you are close enough, y'all might want to do that, but the rest of it's got, you are not too far away, but we'll do it that way and to respect your time. And so be looking for that along about the beginning of November. We'll get that information out to you about that. But we appreciate your time. I know it takes away from you all, and some of you got a good little bit of a drive to go back this afternoon. That also reminds me, you didn't fill out your travel form. If you'll do that and get that to us either today or in the next day or so, we'll go ahead and get those processed and make sure we take care of that for you as well, your travel.
Thank you.
Knowledge. So, any other things for the good, for the cause that we need to hear today?
You see a difference in online votes versus face-to-face?
Good question. These guys may think differently, Steven. You know me, because we work together. I came out here kind of not kicking and screaming, but I was not a real devotee of doing online. I think we've gotten sophisticated enough with our online that, at least my perception, and I've not taught but one course in the MELS program. I've done all my work at the doctor level. But we're getting pretty sophisticated that we can structure the experiences. I do think in their program, and they may agree or disagree, I think this clinical piece that we've really shored up over the last year, we're compensating for that. So instead of having all of them drive to us, have the clinical coaches go to the candidates is probably filling that gap if there was one there. So they may.
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
I think that real conversation is so important. Whatever, just a real conversation, if you have that.
But I say that to say, if y'all think there's a different way that we need to be doing it, let us know. Because that's what we want to hear from you. We want this to be an ongoing relationship. And if you think of things as you drive home today, shoot me an email. And if it's not something I need to put in my hopper, I'll get it into the right hopper so that we can use it. So we want that to be a case that we're hearing from.
Well, and I think something that's a huge compliment to this program and to the process and to how you value the student outcome is that we did have a situation where there was a situation with the coach, and Dr. Lamb took right over and showed right up and was there, and that saved everything. So, we all have this issue.
Yeah. And it's an important
And it's just
point.
that and so that's something that I don't think everybody would have done. So I think that's huge.
We'll be there. We think that's important, but to your point, absolutely. I would prefer that we were all face-to-face, and I could get them down in room 109 at the Charlotte campus like I used to wear Vera and her crowd out. I'd love to do that every day, but that's not where we are. So we're trying to make up.
When you say it's blended, how exactly do you handle that? Is it around 50 minutes of some online classwork, some face-to-face in each course?
We offer two different models. We offer online only, and we offer the blended, which is 4 hours a week online and 4 hours with us in class online. And we vary those back and forth according to what enrollment drives us. But the clinical piece is trying to make up for that lack of meeting every week kind of thing. We're doing low residency and other things. And so, yes, that's exactly what the clinical piece is trying to do is get it back to what the best part of the face-to-face while allowing people to be online. is what we're attempting to do. And so I'm going to Zoom with the coaches here at 6 o'clock that go out I meet with them once a week, the people that are out there. I take a load, Jeff. We all take a load and go out ourselves. Jeff was on the road yesterday just like I was. And we'll be here a day or two. We'll be back on the road again. We think that's important to try to fill in. I wish it's not a plan. I hope that we're making up for that lack of what we had when we had face-to-face. But those days are gone. We can't get those back. The consumer drives that decision.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Be safe as you travel home, and we
Yes.
look forward to seeing you
If you
again
have
online.
your travel, I'll take those for you.
All right, thank you all so much.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
I sold 5 yesterday, so.
I see him from Florida.
Yeah, I know.
I
I could tell he's pretty good.
Well,
yes, about the claw. Yeah, I do. Just tell me when.
No, you tell me that. I'll be there. My kids are there, so I will be there.
You know, don't bite me, you know I'll show up.
I know, I want you to.
But I'm waiting, you kind of got settled in. I'll be there. See you, take care. I'm so glad you came. I appreciate it. I had some issues with lunch in there, but I know you're coming because it's gonna be a job. I wanted to be honest, I just made sure. Your reception rather than. He's great. So I was telling you today, just like back up and what we need to do. If you did, what can we, what we got to look at.
Nice to meet you all. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
That's a long trip.
I don't know what to do.
Made it last night. Was gonna leave school right with the kids yesterday. Oh, no. True, I couldn't put on the bus because what they've done. I've been there with their mamas for 5 o'clock. Drinking, smiling all the time.
Mama's knew that you were supposed to be leaving.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, you did such a great job. We got someone there. We graduated in May, got one. You're my hero.
No, you're mine.
You're my hero.
You're mine.
You know you always have to. It's not about you. We teach leadership.
He knows that the only way I'll do it is.
I'm gonna be here right with you.
I have your number on speed dial. You just be
We're
done.
excited with it. You know that this, I don't even put my office number on my card. That's my cell phone. You know that.
And I have your.
Well, I'm glad you invited me. I
Well,
enjoyed
thanks
it.
for coming. We love having you. I love going down that way.
It's a pretty drive until you get to 85.
Well, and I did find yesterday, Joe got in Greenville and somebody had a wreck and,
Oh, yeah.
but it's amazing. Google automatically rerouted me.
I did it.
It changed. It just popped up on my screen and said, turn right here and go up. And I went all the way around it. It was amazing.
I have a lot of culture to change.
They gave her a local hire AP deputy, who's not even certified. So that's kind of from one direction our plan.
Yeah, so I figured out what to do with the I just hard work.
Yeah.
But I will be, cheer though, we have to figure out how to make that happen. That's why I'm coming back.
Okay, so maybe next,
Next year.
we're looking at next office. We're good. She's coming. I'm telling you, she might be small, but she's a force of nature when she comes through.
Well, I told him, I ran, oh my God, you're the hero. What do you mean I'm the hero?
But see, what we want, I want it, it's not gonna happen, but I want everybody to be like her. I want everybody, but I want everybody to embrace it like she is. Now, think about this, she has more talent than I'll ever have. Her little finger than I'll ever have. But here's the thing, she worked harder than anybody else as well. See, that's the example that I want ours to understand. It doesn't matter that you're talented like her and have all these skills and abilities. She had a baby during this program. She just boiled down, had it, got up, and moved on.
Right, had a 3-year-old and you're half.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm about to. But her, she put the time in as well. She worked. She didn't just rely on it. She was smarter and better than everybody else. She grounded out as well. And that's the exemplar that we want ours. We'll be talking about. She will be. Oh, she will be. I really did think you were. We had it. Yeah. I think statistics for PEOL was good. But I agree, they got more people over there. That's why you do it concurrently, and so you can't do that if you really, so that's why I would recommend doing it concurrently, because I know as hard as you work, you'll be done in 2 years, you'll be done in a year and a half. But she'll speak to you up. Yeah. But anyway, we need Charlotte. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because it wasn't taking a recording, but only get it.
Yeah, we had 2 or 3. Soon, yeah, that's 3.
Well, I thought there were 9 here. The garage area?
4, 5, 6.
There were 5 on this side, 4 on that side.